All of the best games of week 8 for NFL DFS are not on the main slate. We got that Cardinals-Packers game tonight. We've got Cowboys-Vikings. We've got Giants-Chiefs. We got a lot of good games this week, most of them not on the main slate. So our job today is to break down the main slate specifically, try to identify which games grade out well, which games can be close enough to keep things competitive, which spots we might not care about competitiveness and may just stack it anyway, and see how we should play things for this week across NFL DFS. Welcome on into the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast, powered by numberFire. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com, joined here as always by Brandon Gadula. He is the managing editor for numberFire.com. Brandon, week 8 is on the horizon. How are you doing today?
I feel like that Vibe and Cat video. I don't know if you know that one. It's like there's some nice beats going on behind it, and this cat's just like vibing, like nodding its head. The owner's like kind of just like petting it and pushing its head down, but it looks like it's like chilling. That's how I felt whenever you were just saying all this stuff about the intro. I was just like nodding because I'm like, yeah, all this is true. All the good games are off the main slate. We're just kind of like doing our best, picking up, like we're dealing with the scraps of the primetime schedule getting the better of us this week. So, I mean, there are some good games here. There are some stacks that I wouldn't normally have considered on a slate where we had more of the high profile quarterbacks. But I mean, as far as high profile fantasy quarterbacks go this week, you can throw Tom Brady and Matt Stafford in there, but really it's Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts in terms of those rushing quarterbacks that we typically are good targeting or not good targeting, but primarily target. So we're going to talk about some sort of, or at least I am, some pocket passers more, or like some low end guys. And so it feels like a strange week, but that's the fun of DFS is, you can kind of have your process, but it is going to change depending on what you're offered. And so that's why I want to be more open-minded this week. I think I have to be more open-minded this week. And for anyone who listens to our PGA show, they know I love a good balanced lineup. This week might be a little bit more balanced than I typically play. So lots to go over. I think in the end, it's going to be a fun slate to think about. I just don't know if it's going to be a fun slate to sweat because I feel like there's a lot I can get wrong.
For sure. There definitely is. And I think the quarterback discussion is pertinent because, like you said, you try to prioritize rushing quarterbacks. There aren't as many on this slate. There are a couple who grade out well, but like for the most part, it is identifying which pocket passers have the best path to upside, whether it be via good game environments, via just touchdown variants and stuff like that, whatever it may be. But also we have a lot of running backs this week, which is kind of a deviation from what we've had. I was looking at perfect lineups from this year so far. Unless you count Cordell Patterson, there has not been a week where there has been a running back in the flex so far in a perfect lineup. Patterson's made it twice, and there were 2 other backs in both those. So like there's kind of been 2, but like weird year for running backs so far. I think that might change this week, given the number of running backs we have. We'll talk about prioritization of running backs, talk about which quarterbacks we like, despite the fact that we need pocket passers, and more in just one second. First, a quick reminder that we do have a listener league for this podcast and across the FanDuel Podcast Network. To enter that, go to FanDuel.com/league/listener league. $5 entry, 3 entries max. There is no rake for this contest. So FanDuel.com/league/listener league to enter. FanDuel.com/league/listener league. $5 entry, 3 entries max. And again, there is no rake. So FanDuel makes nothing off of this contest. So go get yourself some overlay over there. Hey, football fans, the NFL season is in full swing, and FanDuel and Guinness have teamed up to make your Sunday night that much better. Introducing the Guinness Halloween Challenge, daily fantasy contest plus last touchdown bonus. Here is how it works. Make your best 5-player roster for this Sunday's match between the Cowboys and the Vikings while staying under the salary cap. Compete for a chance for a share of $20,000 in cash prizes. If that's not enough, any lineup that rosters the player in the MVP slot who scores the final touchdown of the game Win a share of $5,000 bonus cash. Sunday night will be here before you know it. So head to FanDuel.com/Guinness Halloween to enter today. Must be 21 plus to enter. Please drink responsibly. Guinness Draft Stout, imported by Diageo Beer Company, USA, New York, New York. For more details at FanDuel.com or download the FanDuel Fantasy app. Eligibility restrictions apply. Let's dive into our slate overview for this week 8 main slate. And again, I think, Brandon, it comes down to identifying the quarterback's upside and how we want to prioritize running backs. But the other thing for me is there are some process-oriented game stacks available on this slate, which is a bit of a deviation from what we had last week. So what's the slate overview for you? What's standing out most when you're looking at this slate from a top-down level?
Yeah, basically what I already did as a bad co-host and kind of went over my slate thoughts already, but
I asked you for it.
I think you just asked me how I was doing, which is always a hard question to answer. So I probably just panicked. And
fair point. Yeah, fair.
I think one of the it's like along those same lines, but I entered the season fully planning just to target the high variance quarterbacks, the guys who can run for 60 yards and a touchdown and really just kind of change things. And in terms of a more bankable approach, because there's always going to be like one quarterback who gets to like 26, 27 at like a low salary, but you can't really nitpick that and say, well, I should have just stacked like that guy. Because you're looking at, one of 12 or 14 quarterbacks that might get there. And so like, that's why you and I have been primarily focusing on the upper tier quarterbacks. I think the question this week is which quarterbacks have upside? Yes, but what are the odds that Josh Allen puts up a performance that you just kind of like had to have? What about Jalen Hurts against the Lions in a dome? I know Jalen Hurts, like people just scrutinize Jalen Hurts for his passing, but I hate saying this, but like he gets there and he puts up these fantasy points because of his rushing ability and his rushing volume. So if you say, you know what, I think the blowout's in effect for the Bills, and so Josh Allen's just going to get to like 25 and it doesn't matter. Jalen Hurts is not good enough to take advantage, and he's going to be stuck at 25 as well. And then Tom Brady and Matt Stafford do have some upside, but it comes from multiple touchdowns. So if you say like, hey, none of these guys are really going to, like, I don't see them destroying the slate, then I'm going to take some savings and look at maybe like a Joe Burrow, more specifically Ryan Tannehill, Carson Wentz. I'm going to talk about the Falcons offense. I think Matt Ryan is not the worst play this week. I will sell you on some Matt Ryan. I can tell you that much.
Nope. Nope.
I think you're thinking too much of that week. And I say this in my notes too. I'm still haunted by that week 1 game. Matt Ryan's been very good since week 4.
Nope. You're not going to talk me into that. You can talk me into some of his players. We can talk about that. But I think the key thing for me on this slate is I don't like any of the value wide receivers. I don't like any of them. Like I did write up one for my player picks because I know I'll have to be down there at some point. But like, I think it goes back to what you said in the intro, where balance will be more in play for me this week than usual. Maybe not so much at running back. Like I do still like the stud running backs, and I do like some of the value plays, which is not a balanced approach, but at wide receiver, tight end, quarterback, I think balance will win out there. For running back, maybe it's like one guy at each tier, stud, mid-range, value, like that kind of thing. But for wide receiver, I think the goal is to not have too much exposure to any one individual guy below 6,000, because like there are so many paths. So I talk about paths to failure. I think that the paths to success for a lot of those guys are very narrow. And that's my concern for the value wide receivers. So I think that trying to identify ways I can be balanced and avoid that low range of wide receiver will be a key for me for this week. Let's talk now about some injuries impacting this week 8 main slate. Miles Sanders likely to miss this week due to an ankle injury. Kenneth Gainwell and Boston Scott split work from last week when Sanders went down. Now Jordan Howard likely to be brought up from the practice squad. So are you going at anybody here, or does the threat of a committee push you away?
Pushes me away. Kenny Gainwell was involved. He's been involved in this offense to some degree before the injury. So you would think he's if I'm considering one, it's just Gainwell for sure.
Yeah.
That much is known. It's a matter of, is there enough from him, even at that salary of 5,900 to make it worthwhile. He was someone that we talked about because a lot of value opportunities opened up at running back, but it, there's just I don't think there's enough of a path for him to get to 18 FanDuel points to make it worthwhile, and I think that other value backs have a little bit of a better shot to get there.
Yeah, I'd agree with that part. I think that Elijah Mitchell specifically has a better shot to get to 18 or whatever. So that's kind of the main thing, the main hang up for me with this one, with regards to getting to Kenneth Gainwell. I do think that like I am willing to consider him and would not be shocked if I used him because he's the guy most likely to get the kind of usage we want, specifically in the passing game. I'm not sure if that'll translate to goal line work. My fear would be that he winds up being JD McKissick, where there's not a lot of rushing. We get the targets, but like that's a good path to 10 points. It's not a great path to 15, 20. And that's my concern there. Because Boston Scott did get some goal line work. Gainwell was out touching or out opportunitying Boston Scott 5-3 while that game was, 5 carries, 3 targets compared to 3 carries, no targets for Scott while that game was somewhat competitive. So I'd give Gainwell the 1A for sure. My concern is that it's a 1A and not a 1. And that's the issue that I get with Kenneth Gainwell.
I mean, I'll nitpick that and I'll say he's the 1 just because nobody else is in that same tier. It's just that his 1 is not enough for me. So like same thing, but just kind of a little bit different. Because like I would see that he's very clearly the majority back.
Right.
But just kind of subbing out inside the 20s. And it's like a Chase Edmonds thing.
It's applying to the Chase Edmonds is a good comp to bring up. Other thing too is it's kind of like the walkthrough you went with CEH and Darrell Williams, where okay, if CEH with the salary, I'd use him. Here it was like you're upgrading CEH because Darrell Williams got more goal line work. Here you're taking Miles Sanders and downgrading him. Would I use a downgraded Miles Sanders at 59 when I could use Elijah Mitchell? Probably not. So I think that's the hang up for me.
Also, I don't know, just because I never look at this team in this backfield, but we have another back, Zach Moss at 6,100. Or do you like him this week at all? Because he keeps kind of emerging for me. If within the context of like these value backs, I almost feel like I'd rather play Zach Moss than Gainwell. And I don't think I've ever played Zach Moss in DFS in my life.
I have. Well, not on a full slate, but I played a lot of single games, Zach Moss, and it's never gone well. If you're asking me would I rather use him than Gainwell, I think yes. Because like he gets some passing game work. I don't think we talk about that, but like he's had 4 targets each of the past 2 games.
Yeah.
Snap rate's pretty good. Should be a positive script against Miami. I think if we're talking relative to Gainwell, I go Moss. Would I go Moss over Mitchell? I think I'd go Mitchell, but it's pretty close, right?
Yeah, I think it's close. I think at a certain point you can't just look at the workloads. You have to look at offensive expectations. And so I just like it's strange. And I'm probably not going to play a lot of these value backs anyway. And I'll probably like a dummy play the guy attached to the lower implied team total with Mitchell rather than Moss. But I think it's close, and it just speaks to like the depth of running back we have of the options. But
for sure.
I know that you and I are going to be building around the guys above this salary tier anyway.
For the most part, yes. I'll have sprinkles here, and I'll be going to Mitchell and Moss when I need to, but like they're not going to be the core plays for me this week. Antonio Brown was on crutches during Wednesday's practice with the Bucs, meaning he is probably going to sit this week. Rob Gronkowski, though, should be back this week. We'll talk more about the Bucs in the bookmakers section. The Browns still super banged up. Nick Chubb is back. Baker Mayfield got in a full practice Wednesday, but Jarvis Landry sat out due to a knee injury. They're facing Pittsburgh this week. Are you willing to use any Browns in this game against Pittsburgh?
Very doubtful. This is one of the games that I would probably just cross off entirely, aside from maybe Najee. His salary's high, but the workload is just, it makes it viable, but probably not a whole lot of exposure here.
Yeah, I don't think any Browns will make the cut for me, honestly. We'll talk about Chubb and Najee in the trend section in terms of like ranking the studs, but like
Gotcha.
they're not going to grade out super high on that list just because the game is
Yeah.
pretty bad. Terod Taylor was designated to return from IR this week from the Texans. That does not mean he will play, but it does mean that there is at least a chance he plays. I'd probably say a pretty good chance personally. So let's talk hypotheticals here. How would Taylor starting impact your view of the Rams and potentially Brandon Cooks in this game?
Would like the Rams more because that game would much more likely stay competitive. Probably not going to stay competitive if Taylor's out, and that's a problem that we have with the Rams this week. But I've been kind of in on Brandon Cooks. I haven't played him, but I'm just like waiting for the right time to be able to play him. It's going to be quarterback dependent, but you have to love playing him in that Houston stadium in a revenge game. So,
well, it's a revenge game both against the Rams, but also like a revenge game against his own team because apparently he's p-worded at the Texans. He's been tweeting. So
is this a
double revenge game?
Revenge squeaky wheel?
Like I think overlap? Like we might get a an Earl Thomas situation where like he scores a touchdown, stares directly at like Nick Caserio up in the GM's box and gives him the double barrel middle fingers. Like we might get one of those, and I'm kind of into that. So I'm not.
I mean, this is totally 3 games. Sorry, good.
This is very facetious, and I want to make sure that's clear. I'm not like prioritizing Brandon Cooks because he's mad, but like I think it's fine.
You could justify prioritizing him because the team will have to throw. He has 3 games with at least 11 targets, 6 games then with at least 7 targets. I know the efficiency's not there, but the salary's low of $6,000, and he's really the only piece you can bring back with. Although I guess we should maybe at least touch on the Houston running backs with Mark Ingram gone.
So Mark Ingram was traded to the Saints this week. Let's talk about the Texans side first, and we'll talk about the Saints side here. Are you willing to use anybody in that committee, or would you rather get hit by a bus?
I'm just very thankful because in a dynasty league with all the numberFire guys, I have David Johnson. He was one of my startup picks.
Did I trade him to you? No, I didn't.
No, he was one of my. I think I took him at like the tail end of the first round in the startup. But
I traded him for Josh Jacobs, so yeah.
I'm joyous because he'll have a little bit more of a pulse, but these are not the types of plays you make in DFS long term. So even at 5,100, I'm not there. I don't know what optimizers will look like. I don't know what his baseline value will be at numberFire.
Yeah.
But it's not going to be enough for me to want to play him. So, but hey, maybe like he or Lindsay will just be an optimizer favorite this week, and we'll get some.
It'd be great.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be shocked if they are, but I don't. No desire for me. You could not pay me to roster them. That could be the wrong process, but I also don't care. As far as the Rams go, let's talk about that side here really quickly. Because again, if Terod Taylor plays, it does imp up the Rams. The problem I'm having is that nobody outside of Cooper Kupp is getting high leverage targets. Tyler Higbee is. He's getting the red zone work, and I love him. But like, it's really just Cooper Kupp. He's 92. So I think they're like, Kupp is good, but like, I'm having a hard time talking myself into Robert Woods. Van Jefferson, I think, is defensible given his salary, but like it's kind of just Kupp and Higbee for me on the Rams, outside of maybe Stafford.
No Henderson.
Oh, sorry, I forgot Joe. I meant the pass catchers. Yeah, Henderson's fine. Henderson, he bugs me, but I'll use him. So I don't know. This could be a me thing, but I kind of think he's not great.
You mean he hasn't gotten 90 rushing yards yet?
He hasn't gotten more than. Oh, sorry. Let me pull this up here. If I'm going to, spew out dumb takes, I should probably back them up with some data. So he's gotten good opportunity.
Yeah.
But he has not had more than 116 yards in scrimmage yet this year, which means if he gets you a touchdown, it's 17.6 FanDuel points, not counting the points for a reception. I kind of want more yardage juice.
So his best game was against the Giants when he had the 2 touchdowns. That was 23.7. Other than that, he has not topped 16.4. And he scores a lot, so he gets you to like that 15, 17 range. So yeah, I mean, maybe it's time that we take a long look at. I feel like there are great comps of guys who play like 80% of the snaps, like in years past, and just kind of do this. But I can't. No, nobody's really coming to mind because you're the comp guy. But
I gotcha. Okay, so
it just feels
uh,
underwhelming.
actually, there are no great comps here.
This season, probably not.
Yeah,
But he is. So here's the thing. Despite saying all that, he's numberFire's top projected value at running back, and I
which is
don't disagree with that.
right. Correct.
I just like
I get weird vibes. I don't know. Like,
yeah,
again, I don't like using like anecdotal stuff. I don't like using sentiment feelings. I want to use data, but like I get weird vibes because like the efficiency is not great and it's been not great over a large-ish sample, and it makes
yeah.
me a little uncomfy. I'll use the word uncomfy to describe
I
it.
could see that. Yeah. I mean, it's tough because like we're always looking for guys who um like play 80+% of the snaps,
Right.
but it just is kind of gross. He's
Yeah.
getting so yes, 69.5 rushing yards per game. His expected rushing yards are 71.9 according to next gen stats. So like definitely not getting you any more than he should be.
Yeah. Henderson or Cordero Patterson?
Patterson.
I do too. That's really scary, but I agree with you. What?
I'm going to talk about the Falcons in one of my trends.
I'm not using their quarterback, man. Stop trying to make me use their quarterback.
We're going to love
it's like the Nick Saban halftime thing. I'm not doing it, so quit asking.
We're going to love 3 of their I'll say pass catchers with Patterson.
Oh, Pitts.
You're not going to love Ridley Pitts and Patterson?
I was like, who's the third one? I forgot their disgusting rookie tight end, who is probably the best tight end in the slate. Cool job, Jim. Okay, so with the Saints, does Mark Ingram being there worry with Kamara at all, or no? He might not even be active.
I'm already worried about Kamara to begin with, just because
Bucks.
I just don't love this offense.
Yeah. I like the offense when it's doing what it did on Monday. I just don't like him against the Bucks as much.
Yeah, I mean, and if I'm not mistaken, this is going to sound like a really dumb thing, and I could have pulled this up earlier, but he did get a bunch of targets. I know he's been getting targets. He's got 19 over the past 2 games. I think he got a lot of targets against the Bucks, but didn't do a whole lot with them last year. Don't quote me on that. I should have known that, but I mean, the 19 targets are the reason that I would still consider him at 8,400. The real thing, though, is like if we're gonna want to play Tom Brady and the Bucks, who else from the Saints would you even consider?
Yeah, I think they're probably going to throw more, which could increase interest in like Marquez Callaway. It could increase interest in Marquez Callaway again.
Yeah, it's just like
second one. But like even his target shares kind of stinks. Even if they throw more, like, does it matter?
I don't think
like
so.
Traquan could get more work this week too. So I don't know. It's a weird game. We'll talk about it in the bookmaker section. Jerry Jeudy, don't call me Doug. Jerry, don't call me Doug Jeudy, is making his return for the Broncos this week. Pretty bad game. It's a low total. The total did increase, though. I will say that. It went to 44.5. We got Jeudy and Cortland Sutton, very good players. Washington's defense, not great. So are you taking any swipes at the Broncos passing game here?
Yeah, I like Jeudy. Spoiler alert, he's one of my loves at the salary of 6,000. He's I could scroll down and check my notes, but he's like top 4 in targets per route. I know it's a small sample for him because he hasn't played a lot, but like you don't throw someone, I think it's 7 targets on 23 routes. You don't treat someone like that.
I think it was 3 deep targets too.
And then like just ignore him. So not the best game, but we're scrounging for value at receiver. Just because he doesn't have a 5 to start his salary doesn't mean he doesn't fit that. So I mean, I will probably have very, very minimal exposure to receivers in the 5,000 range, and having Jeudy right at 6,000 helps me. So I'm in on Jeudy. Probably would just take the savings there compared to Cortland Sutton, who I love too. But
Jeudy or Cooks?
So it came down to those two for my third love at receiver. I think they're both in play, but if it's Taylor, maybe Cooks. If not, it's Jeudy. I think it's close, and I think again, with those two options, because I would consider Brandon Cooks regardless, just because I could see him getting 12 targets and
Oh, he's the Darrell Henderson of wide receivers. I figured it out. Okay. Gets volume, but doesn't do a whole lot with it because it's not because of him. It's his quarterback's fault. Darrell Henderson's is because Sean McVay trails off into incoherent babbling. But I think that they're the same.
Yeah, I'd probably lean Judy, but both are viable for me.
I lean Judy, but both are viable for me as well. There we go. Love it. Okay, final one here is T.Y. Hilton didn't practice again on Wednesday due to a quad issue. We'll talk to that one in the bookmaker section, which we're on to right now. Let's talk about what the bookmakers are saying for this week. Highest total on the slate is for that T.Y. Hilton game between the Colts and the Titans. It is a 51-point total. Open at 48. Hey, should have listened to the Monday show. We told you to bet that. Here we go. It's a 2-point spread. Indy is favored by 2. It was Tennessee by 1. That's not across like key numbers, but like it's interesting that it's moved 3 points in their favor. It's in a dome. It is a traditional game stack in terms of spread and total. Brandon, how stack this game?
Yes.
Okay.
Probably all the ways.
Do you prefer the passing games or the backs or combo plate?
Just all, honest. Like, I mean, this is the game that now I will say that this game has like pace concerns, pass rate concerns, but relative to the other games on the slate, I can't really hate on it too much. I couldn't even probably narrow down at this point a favorite stack. Both quarterbacks are in play, and that's a big checklist for a big check on the list for us is whether you can play both quarterbacks, and we can. We have some relative value at pass catcher with Michael Pittman Jr. at 6,600. AJ Brown, 7,600, very much in play there too. It's probably just those two at receiver.
Oh, Julio?
I mean, maybe.
That's pretty high for his current state, is what I would say.
So both backs, both quarterbacks, both of the top 2 receivers, I'd say.
Do you have a preference between Taylor and Henry relative to salary?
Probably Taylor. I think I need salary this week. I can't really I can't justify punting too much at tight end just because we have some really viable guys at the top with Pitts,
right?
Gronk if he's good to go, Gesicki, Hawkinson. So I'd probably lean Taylor, and I even in a like a cash game like our head to head. I might not be able to get to Derrick Henry. That does not mean I'm not going to play him in tournaments because I definitely will.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think that he's a hair above Taylor relative, even considering salary. Because I can get to a balanced lineup with Henry. I know it's kind of contradictory, but like I can get there. I was building him out today. The issue that I have with Henry over Taylor, I think that my optimal game stack might be Tannehill, Taylor, and AJ Brown, because I'm worried about the Colts pass rate in the red zone. They've run, I think, like 21 red zone plays the past 3 weeks, and I think 15 or 16 have been Jonathan Taylor runs, and a couple have been Carson Wentz sacks. Like, that's my concern with the Wentz, is that they're very, very run heavy in the red zone. So I think my optimal stack is Tannehill, Brown, Taylor, but I also would still rank Henry over Taylor in a vacuum. Like as a one-off, I'd rather get to Taylor than Henry, but I like both a lot. I think that might be my top 2 backs this week, potentially.
Yeah, very easily could be. It's, I don't know. I mean, it just feels like it's the game. It has paths to being underwhelming.
Yeah.
It is a divisional matchup, which always gets me a little bit.
It's actually
concerned.
A repeat as well, because they played in week 3.
So
yeah.
It's a bit unnerving, but it's not going to be enough for me to talk myself out of it entirely.
Yeah, I think that's where I'm at as well. But I think it's not. Is it the number 1 game stack for you despite those concerns?
I mean, I don't know what else would even really be in the conversation.
Eagles, Lions, kind of.
It's a 1 quarterback game.
Is it? Just kidding.
So that's a 1 quarterback game.
Yeah.
Are there any other 2 quarterback games other than this?
Um,
Pittsburgh, Cleveland, no. Carolina, Atlanta,
are you
no.
sure Pittsburgh, Cleveland's a no? Pretty
Uh,
tempting quarterbacks there.
could be Rams, Texans if we get
No,
Tyrod, but I don't think I'd go there.
absolutely not. I can't use Jameis, so that's a no on that one. Can't use Mac Jones. So yeah, it's only 2 quarterback game on the slate. Yeah.
So I think from that standpoint, it has to be the top stack.
And from a process perspective, like high total, tight spread, it makes sense too. But
Yeah.
the pace thing is good to point out. I'd agree. One total that's been dropping a bit is the Saints Bucks one. It opened at 50.5. It's now 49.5. Spread is widened to 5.5. The good thing is we have a better idea of where the ball is going with Antonio Brown likely being out. So where does this game rank for you from a game stacking perspective?
I hate stacking the Bucks when they have more players healthy.
But it's only Gronk. It's not like they were still throwing to OJ Howard and Cameron Brate. So I don't think I don't think he matters. I think it's Brown that matters.
Yeah, but you know that he's going to get red zone targets.
Sure, but I don't care.
You don't care.
Like last week, Brate and OJ Howard combined for 7. In the game that Antonio Brown missed that Gronk played earlier this year, he got 7. So it's not. I don't think I don't think he needs to move the needle too much. It's more so Brown moving the needle.
So you asked me where this game lined up in terms of stacks.
Yeah.
I would probably say Philly Detroit is second.
Okay.
I feel pretty good with that.
Okay.
This one might be third.
Okay. I think I agree.
Yeah. I think this one's probably third. Godwin's salary is still good at 7,200. Evans 75 still good.
Yep.
Brady is one of the QBs I'm considering, which is not like it's not going to shock anyone who's like listening to us for the first time, but we just not really the type of player I play. And like he threw 4 touchdowns last week, didn't even get to 25 FanDuel points. That's for like a cash game. I could see like the high floor here, but and I know that he's gotten to like 28, 29 early on in the season, but it takes him 4 touchdowns to like get there. So it's a matter of, do you think he's going to throw for 4 touchdowns or not?
Maybe. Given their pass rate in the red zone, he very well could. I put a lot of thought into making him one of my loves at quarterback. I did make him my love at quarterback. Because they throw a lot in the red zone. This game will be competitive, which means you're not going to get a 4 touchdown game that's 24 FanDuel points because the yardage will be higher in this situation. The Bucks or the Saints very good against the rush. I think that juices things up as well. Easier to stack right now with no Brown. I think looking at Godwin and Evans, you're going to see all week the numbers of Evans versus Lattimore. Like that's going to pop up everywhere you turn this week. I think it's decently legitimate. So I'm okay going Godwin over Evans, but I think it'd be very, 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 very foolish not use Mike Evans at all as a result of those numbers because Mike Evans is very good. He's tied to Tom Brady, which has not always been the case. So it's okay to downgrade him, but do not avoid him as a result of the Marshawn Lattimore numbers.
Yeah. So, I mean, we feel pretty good. Well, we didn't mention Fournette yet.
Like Lenny.
Where does he stack up for you
among the mid-range guys?
Yeah.
Okay. So I have him above Henderson. That might be stupid. Maybe I should go Henderson above Lenny. Let me pull up my sheet here. Actually, I probably should go Henderson above Lenny just because path of least resistance, right?
Yeah, I mean it's a 500. It does go a long way, but 500 is doable.
Are we including Swift in this discussion or no?
We can.
Okay, so I'd probably go Swift, Patterson, Lenny, Henderson, Mixon. It's probably a very dumb ranking.
Why?
I don't know. It makes me feel uncomfortable for some reason.
It's hard.
Yeah.
To we know Joe Mixon has maybe are they going to need to ride Joe Mixon against the Jets this week? Probably don't have to.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit like he's probably going to be, I'm going to be lower on Mixon, but then I could see like a 2 touchdown, 90, 100-yard game from him. I would probably say Patterson might be my number one.
Above Swift?
If I'm factoring in Swift, probably Swift, Patterson, Henderson.
I should go Henderson above Fournette. Yeah, I think you're right. I think I should go Henderson above Fournette. You're right. You're right. Stop overthinking it, Jim. Just do it. Just the matchup's pretty tough for Lenny. I love the workload still, but that's enough where I'll put him a little bit lower. I'll get back on him later. Just not. I don't have to force it this week in a rough spot.
It just drops off after Fournette, so
yeah.
I think that he could get a little bit of a popularity bump for anyone who's like looking for a running back and they have just 72. Like, I know that's very specific, but
yeah, it could happen. I think Damian Harris is going to catch a lot this week.
That's true
from a popularity perspective. So maybe that helps Fournette, but
I don't think any of these running backs, like Fournette's draft percentage is not something I'm factoring in. I don't think it's going to. It's just more of a. It was more about the tier.
Are we in agreement that Swift and Patterson are 1-2?
I think so. I've honestly, like, I've been in on Swift so much.
I haven't.
That like, it feels like, hey, maybe I need to back off. But like now, it's dumb to back off at this point because
his workload's getting better. Yeah. And he's finally facing a bad defense, which you'll talk about in the trend section. How about that? What about the Saints pass catchers not named Alvin Kamara? Well, I guess that we should talk about Kamara too. So the matchup's really tough. I'll talk about him more in trends, but like, what are your thoughts on Kamara? And then I guess it's kind of just Marquez Callaway, the guy who's getting like noteworthy volume for this team right now.
Yeah, I'm not gonna. That's why I don't love this game more. Is just our ways to bring it back with the Saints are basically just Kamara. Last year he played the Bucs 3 times. He ran 13 times per game for 47 yards on average, 6.7 targets per game, 15.5 FanDuel points. Went over 20 FanDuel points once, but other than that was at 12 and 13.4. It's a different offense now, I know, but like I could point to the targets getting better the past 2 games and say, hey, he's just going to see like 12 targets. And that for us is worth about 24 carries.
Yeah.
But if he doesn't, and whether he does or doesn't, like the touchdown expectations for this team, like not the highest. Their implied team total is 22. The total is 49.5. Like, but their implied team total is 4.5 point. Is it 4.5? 5.5.
It was 4.5. Did it move back to 5.5?
I'm just on numberFire's heat map, so
that only pulls every 45. It's back to 5.5. You're right. Cool job, Jim. Cool job. You idiot.
So I mean, that's like on the low end of implied team totals.
I was thinking of this the Patriots Chargers game. That's why. Okay, sorry. Proceed.
So that's 10th lowest. I just feel like this is not the best stack. It's a divisional matchup too.
So Marquez Callaway, I think, is viable as like a 10 to 15% type guy. And I think that he'd be the first run back option I'd have outside of Kamara. I think that Kamara works as a bring back for game stacks. What I would say though, is that I'm going to have Brady lineups. I am receptive to having no bring back in those Brady lineups, just because I think there's a very real chance that they just kind of, take care of business here. And because the Saints spread things out, it's not enough to justify it. So I would say my options for Brady bringbacks are Kamara, Callaway, and then blank.
Yeah, I mean, we always want to look at like the overall trends in the data, and that says, like I looked at stack probabilities, and whenever a quarterback puts up a big game, the opposing quarterback actually has a higher rate of like chance to put up a big game. The opposing wide receiver 1 has a bigger chance, but that only kind of factors in if it makes sense.
Is a wide receiver 1?
Yeah, and like I do a lot of single games analysis, and I'll talk about relevant hit rates and stacks for like tonight's game and I should say Thursday's game probably, but the trends only matter if like the teams in play actually fit Like if there's not a stud receiver, it doesn't really matter what like the receiver MVP numbers are, that kind of stuff. So it's one thing I'm trying to be better at is
Yeah.
I always want to look at the data and not kind of assume that we know like what we say is true, because sometimes that's not always the case. But I also want to make sure that the overall trends aren't being applied like blindly, and that I have to stack the Saints if I want to play Brady, or not stack Brady because I feel like I can't bring it back.
Yeah. With Callaway, the checklist at wide receiver is they need to be able to get 85 yards or 2 touchdowns, and he did get both in one game this year. So I think he works and is someone I will use. My level of confidence will be low, and my exposure will not be all that high. Mostly relegated to game stacks, maybe some one-offs if I need the salary savings. Final game to talk about here in the bookmaker section is Patriots versus Chargers. Spread is 4.5 there. That had been at 5.5 most of the week, but then shifted to 4.5 overnight. Total is 48.5. The Chargers are coming off a bye. Are you looking to stack them here? And are you willing to use anybody on the Patriots?
I think the easier question to start with is the Patriots.
Okay.
I would consider Hunter Henry.
Okay.
Because he's a tight end. He's had a ton of touchdowns, which kind of implies that he won't score eventually, but it is a revenge game for Hunter Henry. And who else from the Patriots can you play? I'm not going to Damian Harris. As you pointed out on Monday, his workload didn't change. His efficiency changed last week, and that got him the bigger game. But if that's not going to be, and you know, the concern is that the Chargers will let you run on them.
Mm-hmm.
But if Harris doesn't pour in 2 touchdowns, like I don't think he's going to do a whole lot to make a difference. With the 2 touchdowns, he got to 24.3 FanDuel points. So,
yeah. I mean, like, it's the same question we use with other similar backs. What are the odds he makes me regret not using him?
it's almost 0. This is last week was like his best case outcome, basically.
Yeah. Like, I just think the Chargers are going to be pretty solid in this game. And that taints it a lot too. Cause like, I think that Damian Harris and Elijah Mitchell are basically clones, except one team is 3.5 point favorites. I think they should favor by like 8. And the other team is a 4.5 point dog. And one guy also saves you $1,200 in salary. So like, why would I use Harris when I can get his clone for $1,200 less and a better script?
Yeah. So I think for me, if I'm bringing it back, it's just going to be Hunter Henry. But this also might be another spot like we just talked about with the Bucks, where you just don't bring it back, but don't let that talk you out of stacking the Chargers if you like it. Herbert's not going to be a core play for me. I could see the case. He's probably in the consideration set to be one of the better quarterback plays for me this week. We know where the ball's generally going with this team.
Right.
I could keep banging my head against the wall and playing Keenan Allen, but I mean, Keenan Allen definitely in play for like a head-to-head sort of vibe. At 6,900.
Do you prefer him or Ridley in 2 guys who have been
Ridley?
Okay, I agree.
I think has so much more yardage upside.
Yeah. I think the Chargers mostly make sense for one-offs. I like Mike Williams for one-offs. I'm okay with Allen. Eckler's kind of oversalaried. I don't know if that's like heresy. I think he's kind of oversalaried though.
Yeah.
So like, I think to me, they're more so like a one-off type team than a game stack, in part because like, I just don't really want to bring it back with anyone on the Patriots. One thing to note is part of the reason we had talked about Hunter Henry on Monday was because Jonnu Smith got banged up. He was limited in practice Wednesday, so probably going to play. And I think that does matter a bit.
I mean, he's been playing anyway, so like Hunter Henry's route rate, his workload's been he's been separated from Jonnu Smith with Jonnu on the field.
You're right. I don't know. It's just an underwhelming game. So I think that for me, it's mostly Chargers like one-offs. I like them as one-offs, but it's hard to bring it back. And I think that might be enough where I don't necessarily go Herbert either.
Yeah. So this one, and I sound like a moron here, but I'm pretty sure this has the highest. I haven't looked at pace enough this week just because I don't think it's enough to dictate where I'm going. But this game, I think, has the highest projected, highest average pace for me But my concern, honestly, is the Chargers will let you run on them, and the Patriots might just like grind the clock down by running the ball. And so they might be snapping the ball pretty quickly, but they also might just keep the clock moving. So, and you'd have to think the Patriots know enough that they got to kind of play some keep away here.
Mm-hmm.
So this game is not really, despite a great pace, despite really good pass rates overall, despite, studs, I would say, on the Chargers side, not really a game I'm going to have as that much exposure to.
I think I'd agree with that outside of the one-offs, the Chargers side. Yeah. But the pace thing you bring up is fair too. Let's move down to the trends and talk about those and talk about, I think the game we agreed was the second best game to stack on the slate. That is the Lions versus the Eagles. And part of the reason why I think this one is enticing for stacking, despite the fact that both teams are very underwhelming, is that the Lions have faced a pretty tough schedule so far. So you're going to run through that and then we'll talk about this game as a whole.
Yeah, and it's a dome game, which we talked about feels like months ago. Which
Woo!
I guess, but that leads to a higher expectation to overperform projections. You got to like that. But yeah, I was digging into this game and I was surprised because I didn't quite realize it, but some vindication maybe for your boy, Jared Goff, unless she's no longer your boy in public. I don't know.
Not in public. That's a Slack take.
Okay.
It's a SOT, Slack only take.
Okay. So I'm not about to claim, despite what I say, that the Lions offense is going to be fantastic. I'm not saying that Jared Goff is like a great quarterback play, but it's really noteworthy that they have not faced a single team currently worse than 15th in numberFire's adjusted pass defense metric so far this season. That does not mean that at the time they played only top half defenses. It's just as the sample grows, these defenses have all been top half now that the Lions have faced. So that's like to face every opponent being a top half unit in terms of adjusted pass defense is, I think, relevant and noteworthy for, an offense that probably not going to do a whole lot against tough opponents. But factoring in opponent adjustments, Jared Goff has still fallen short of expectation as a passer, according to my data, but his adjusted passing efficiency isn't that horrible. It's down there with guys like Jalen Hurts and Ben Roethlisberger, who they're very different fantasy performers. I'm not saying we would play Ben Roethlisberger in this situation, but I think the question is, would we write off like the Steelers offense in this situation? And probably not. So I think that the point that I'm trying to make is that Jared Goff has been good enough to keep this offense relevant in this particular matchup. They're playing indoors, like I said. It's the weakest pass defense that they'll have faced all season. The Eagles are 21st by numberFire's adjusted metrics against the pass. And Jared Goff, if you look at his splits against non-top 10 adjusted pass defenses, so 3 games there, he's got a passing net expected points per dropback mark of 0.05. That's about expectation once adjusted for the opponents he's faced. Just 222 yards, 0.7 touchdowns. So, like, not amazing. I'm not saying this is about Jared Goff, but the Eagles themselves, if you look at their defense, have faced some polarizing competition. Patrick Mahomes, Tom Brady, Dak Prescott, Derek Carr, but then also Jimmy Garoppolo, Matt Ryan, and Sam Darnold. They've kept the latter 3, who are probably more comparable to Jared Goff, under 200 passing yards with 2 total passing touchdowns in this game. So there is still a path to the Eagles being good enough to limit bad passers, but getting burned by those thud passers that they've faced. But the overall game environment is like good enough where I want to play DeAndre Swift. I want to play TJ Hawkinson. I think that this game has enough legs to go over the total. So I'm in on this game. I'm not in on Jared Goff again. I need to make that clear. But I think he can do enough here to make this game worthwhile, put Jalen Hurts back in play, make us go to Dallas Goedert, consider Devontae Smith, because the Lions are 32nd against the downfield pass. So it sounds like we both like this game. What do you think about this one overall?
Yeah, I think it's pretty solid. Just because like I haven't been as high on Swift as you've been traditionally, because like expectations for the offense have been so low, but part of that's because of the teams they faced. So now that obstacle is removed and his workload has honestly gotten a bit better recently, then like what hangups do I have? Because that workload is sick. looking at guys in the main slate, if you include the slow ramp up, he has 26 adjusted opportunities per game. That is behind Henry, Najee, Kamara, Cordero in his most relevant sample, Fournette, and Khalil Herbert in their most relevant samples. But not all those guys are in easier or tougher or easier matchups like Swift has this week. So I think Swift is really, really solid. Comparing him to Henderson, like we were talking about the lack of yardage upside for Henderson. Swift does not have that issue. He's had 100 plus yards 4 separate times now. Henderson's gotten there twice, and Swift had 144 last week, in part due to one long play, which is worth noting. But good players are better able to generate long plays. So I think that's enough where I like him a lot. And I think that you just use Devontae Smith or Dallas Goedert as a bring back. I think I'll be a lot higher on Swift on the Lions than Hawkinson, just because Hawkinson's salary is within 600 of Pitts. And I think Pitts' yardage upside is a lot better. That could be a result of Hawkinson having faced these tougher defenses, but I'd really think I'd rather get up to Pitts than Hawkinson. So to me, it's Swift is a standout. Hawkinson is okay. Definitely will be okay there. And then Devontae, Goddard on the Eagles side. I will use Hurts. Okay with that for sure. So yeah, I think this game's pretty solid. I will rank it number 2 definitively now, I think.
Yeah, I mean, the sheer fact that we have multiple options on both sides, but not so many that we don't know where to go. That's kind of what I look for in a game stack, because even you want game stacks that other people like, which kind of sounds weird because that means people like games that should score points. But you can also differentiate in that sense then. And that's really encouraging. So,
yeah,
the Swift Hurts Goddard stack, might be chalky, but it's not going to be mega chalky just because it's a running back and we have other options. I think Darrell Henderson will be very, very popular given everything. Yeah. So I definitely have Swift over Henderson now.
I think the negative sentiment around Hurts too will keep his roster rate at least in check, which it probably shouldn't, but it probably will, if I had to guess. I'll be there for sure.
Yeah.
I think he's worth it. Let's talk now about the workload of the stud running backs, because we've got good options in the stud tier this week at running backs. So we have to be selective because we want balance, and we have to prioritize how we want to rank these guys. So I want to dig into their workloads and see how we should rank them. We got 7 guys with salaries of $8,000 or higher, so let's rank them. Of those, James Robinson is last. He is last among the group in yards per game, second to last in red zone share. I'm going to put him last. Austin Eckler is worst in red zone share and second to last in yards from scrimmage, but I'll put him 5th above Nick Chubb. Chubb is in a terrible game, and as we know, has flaws in his workload. I think Dearness Johnson played well enough where they'll just kind of use Dearness Johnson or Nick Chubb. It's probably going to be still a split there with how well Dearness played. Bad game. So to me, it's Robinson at the bottom, then Chubb, then Eckler, which whittles it down to Derrick Henry, Najee Harris, Jonathan Taylor, and Alvin Kamara. Henry towers above everyone else, though, from a workload perspective. He's averaging 146.1 yards per game. Nobody else above 113. Red zone workload for Henry is 47.8%. Very good. So I know his salary is 10.5, but he's still worth that. He is, considering salary, not considering game stacks, number 1 for me. Alvin Kamara facing the Bucs, big factor here. They did let up a $133 to Khalil Herbert last week, but that is just the second time this year they've let up more than 80 yards to a running back. And Herbert did do that in the first half. He had 91 on the ground alone in the first half. So it was not garbage time. He was actually doing it the whole game. They faced a bunch of bum running backs, which is why I'm still in on Kamara, but it does matter that they're very good against the rush and teams do not run against them. Taylor's facing Henry, best game of the week. His adjusted opportunities numbers are still low, but he's second of this group in yards per game, second in red zone share. The one guy ahead of him in red zone share is Najee Harris. He is just behind Taylor in yards per game due to a lack of efficiency. He's also in a much worse game. So after Henry, ranking out Harris, Kamara, and Taylor is tough. I think I'm leaning Taylor first, despite his limitations, just to get access to that game. And because the red zone share is good, the efficiency is good, I would go Kamara third. I will take concerns around a matchup over concerns around a game, which pushes me towards Kamara. But if Najee winds up going overlooked due to all the good options here, I will happily pivot. Like, I think that he would be a good tournament option there. I just think that he's fourth of this group straight up. So to me, the top 7 are Henry, Taylor, Kamara, Najee, Eckler, Chubb, Robinson. How are you viewing this group, Brandon? Am I off with any of these guys? What are your thoughts here?
Lots of names to go over. I think in a vacuum, Henry's still the one.
Yeah.
Even with the salary, the bigger question is, can I really get to him in a single entry is different than a cash game. In a single entry, I'm much more inclined to get there. In a cash game, I might try to get a little bit more balanced because we have some comparable situations with lower salaried backs. Taylor's going to be 2 here for me, just with the game, with the red zone equity. And then probably Kamara 3, Harris 4. The salaries kind of get me there. The game for Kamara is a lot better. So I'm going to go, I think that's how you ranked them too. Henry, Taylor, Kamara, Najee.
So I built out a Wentz lineup with Henry before and it was fine. I just built out one with Jalen Hurts and Devontae and Swift. So like an Eagles game stack with Henry in there. You can still do that without using a receiver below 6,000, but it does mean you are living in that low 6,000 range. So you can still get a balanced lineup there. It's just a little bit tougher. You can do it with Wentz for sure. I know that one. Like a Wentz Pittman stack works very well with Henry. I think like a Tannehill Henry stack works because you're getting access to every yard and every touchdown on that team effectively.
I was going to say, you're probably open to that. And I assume you're open to a Wentz Taylor stack, get all the touchdowns.
Yes.
Not all the yards, but probably all the touchdowns.
Yes. I think that's a good question to ask too. I would say yes. Just because that game is good enough where I will do that. I prefer Tannehill Henry over Wentz Taylor.
Yeah.
I would also do a Tannehill Taylor Henry stack, which is a lot of like running backs in the same game. But because those two live off big plays, they drain less clock. And I think that matters a lot for game stacking 2 running backs in the same game. So good question. I think we're in agreement there. So let's move on to your second trend. Talking about that Falcons-Panthers game. Sell me on that, Ryan. It'll be a futile effort, but like, let's give it a shot, baby. Let's see what happens.
So I kind of wrote off the Falcons. And by kind of, I mean, I wrote off the Falcons offense after their week 1 game against the Eagles. Sounds like you did too. And it sounds like you haven't gotten back on. And it sounds like I haven't until I really looked at them a little bit closer. The Eagles we know are not a great pass defense. So like that's kind of still in the back of my head here is that, we saw that week 1 game just be a nightmare, but things have been different since that week 1 game. Matt Ryan has thrown for at least 243 yards in the 5 games since week 1 and at least 283 yards in 4 of the 5 for an average of over 300 yards per game. He also has multiple touchdowns in all those games since starting in week 2. He's had his air yards number surge from 170. It was 179, 170, 148 through 3 games. Then over the past 3, 441, 350, 368. Through week 3, Matt Ryan had a negative 0.09 passing net expected points per dropback mark. It was 0.16 points per play worse than expected, accounting for opponent adjustments. In 3 games since, he's at 0.36 passing net expected points per play. That's 0.2 points per play better than expected. The 0.36 passing net expected points per dropback over the past 3 weeks, not accounting for opponent, it's on a better ADOT, 9.1 compared to 4.2 in the first 3 games. He's averaging basically double the amount of downfield attempts he's had, 6 over the past 3 games, 3.3 in his first 3. I think a 3-game sample is big enough to want to buy back in with such drastic splits. And it's not just efficiency, it's the downfield work that we've seen. There's a clear shift, and we saw how they used Kyle Pitts last week. We know Calvin Ridley can get as many downfield targets as he can handle. That's really appealing. The Panthers' pass defense is like tougher, it's for sure, than the teams that he's faced recently with Washington, the Jets, and Miami. But they've only faced one efficient passer, and that was Dak Prescott. He shredded them. Kirk Cousins, which might be a somewhat fair comp for Matt Ryan at this point, threw for 373 yards and 3 touchdowns. We've got plenty of options in this offense with Kyle Pitts, Calvin Ridley, Cordero Patterson. it's going to be really hard for me to want to say that I prefer Matt Ryan to Carson Wentz or Ryan Tannehill, but on a slate where we don't have a ton of great passing options, I think Matt Ryan is in play. And if he's not, there's enough that we should feel really confident with the 3 skill position players.
I agree with that part. I do not agree with the Matt Ryan part.
What is the difference between he and Carson Wentz right now? Aside from matchup, like defensive matchup.
Carson Wentz is playing better. You know that I'm not a Wentz person. So if you adjust for schedule, Atlanta's 25th in schedule adjusted passing offense, and Minnesota's 4th. You said that Cousins and Ryan were the same. How dare you? Not that I would ever defend Kirk Cousins. That sounds like a miserable thing to do. I have much better ways to spend my time. But like,
could you tell me?
I think the difference is I believe in the Panthers defense. That's the key difference here.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah,
but as someone who looks at the most relevant samples for baseball pitchers, guys who throw in different pitches and not considering them the same player, do you not consider someone with a 9.1 ADOT different than a 4.2 ADOT? Like, do you think that's a change? Or should we just factor in the full season for him?
No, I think it's fair to like look at the more recent data because it's a new offense. They were figuring out how to use Kyle Pitts, but I also don't think there is a relevant sample because we have not seen him be more aggressive against a competent defense yet.
Yes, that's the concern.
Yeah, that's why I don't think there is a relevant sample. Like, I'm concerned this offensive line may not hold up against the Panthers' pass rush. I think that is something that could worry me a bit. Does that mean I will not use Cordero, Ridley, Pitts? Absolutely not. Love them. Totally on board there. I think that what you said is enough to get me in on them. And I was in there for sure before, but it's not enough to get me in on even considering Matt Ryan personally.
Is the arrow up at all?
It's better.
Okay.
Yeah. It's better on this offense. I would need a lot to get to Matt Ryan. I'm not even close yet. I need a lot to get there, but like I'm very open to this offense. I think that his play being better improves my outlook for Ridley, Pitts, Patterson. Not enough to consider Ryan yet.
Okay. I mean, I think with the state of quarterback, and I never thought I'd get to this point with Matt Ryan, but
who are you bringing it back with? Is it DJ Moore or bust or?
Yeah.
Okay. I might use some Robbie. I don't want to. I've not used. I think I've used him once.
Is Robbie? No, that's not fair to Darrell Henderson.
No, do it. Oh. A little extreme, but I think it's funny. And I appreciate it. I've been on Robbie just for the Cowboys game. I've not used in the past 2 weeks. Might get there this week because of the 5,000 rated receiver being so bad, but like, I don't want to. I hate myself in advance for it, but like,
I have Matt Ryan and Carson Wentz fairly comparable adjusted for opponents though. So I just want to make that known.
Okay. Indy's 16th by numberFire stuff, and Atlanta's 25th.
But first of all, what's the gap?
Oh.
But like
0.07 for Atlanta. Actually, I could look. 0.07 for Atlanta.
Carson Wentz, 42% passing success rate. Matt Ryan, full season, 49%.
Big plays matter. When you got Mossel Pittman,
this is like
Mossel Pittman catching
this
balls
is like
as opposed to Calvin Dustley.
This is like Deebo Samuel reignited. You're thinking of Matt Ryan as weeks 1 through 3 Matt Ryan.
Those are different years. This is the same season when he's still like different years are different. Different quarterbacks are different. Come on, get out of here. For my second trend, let's talk about a good offense. Let's just do it because the Bills are good. We can talk about the Bills here. They are 13.5-point favorites against the Dolphins this week. I think that's aggressive. I will bet the Dolphins plus 13.5. I get it. I get why they're there, but I think it's a little aggressive. Either way, I think it's worth digging into what the Bills do in blowouts to see how we should handle them here. And thankfully, we got a big sample because the Bills blow a lot of people out. Each of the Bills' 4 wins this year have been by 18 plus points. They won 2 of those by at least 35. So they've shown us how they handle things when they're blowing teams out. And let's game plan in case that happens. In those 4 games, Josh Allen is averaging 33 pass attempts per game. His minimum was 26 against Kansas City, but they also ran just 54 plays in that entire game. He turned those 26 attempts into 315 yards and 3 touchdowns. So pass attempts are naturally lower when you're picking up chunk gains. That's what they did against the Chiefs in that game. That to me says we can still consider Josh Allen even in a heavy spread here. I also think there's enough here to justify Stephon Diggs. Diggs is at 26% of the team's targets.
Oh,
I did type Bills, but Diggs is at 26% of the team's targets. He has double-digit targets in 4 out of 6 games. He has 8, 10, 10, and 5 in the 4 blowouts. That's 8.25 targets per game in just the blowouts. And again, I don't think it's a given this game is a blowout. Dawson Knox is out right now, which may further bloat the target total for Diggs. Diggs, I would say, is a priority at $7,300. As of the backs, they have averaged about 22 rush attempts per game in that span between the two of them, which is not great when you're splitting it. Zach Moss, in his 4 games, the 1A, over Singletary has 27% of the team's red zone chances, 71 yards per game. I think, again, like we discussed before, I'm willing to consider him, but there are concerns there. So it's a pretty thin list. I like Allen. I like stacking him with Diggs. I can consider Zach Moss. But to use Beasley and Manny, I'm kind of banking on this game staying closer, and their salaries are pretty high. I think it's possible, but Diggs has appeal across all scripts. So how are you viewing the Bills here, and will you go with any Dolphins run backs?
Like the Bills, I mean, Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs have the top 90th percentile stack outcome in my simulations. They also have the top 90th percentile stack value. What I was really drawing attention to is that you said it's enough to justify Stephon Diggs.
Oh yeah.
Stephon Diggs is I'm worried that I know he's going to be popular.
Mm-hmm.
I'm worried I'm going to get out over my skis on Stephon Diggs, who still has high variance because he's a receiver. But you don't get players with this workload of this skill level with regression coming his way still at 7,300, tied to the top passer of the week. So,
yeah,
I mean, Diggs is like a lock in cash games for sure. I'm probably not going to get to Manny or Beasley. I'm more likely to get to Moss, but even then, I really want to build around the mid-range running backs. It does kind of feel like a game where Manny and Beasley come through, and I still feel like I will tilt during the game, but I will then look back and say the salaries were just too high for those guys. So I'm weighing on the Bills. I don't know what I'm doing with the Dolphins yet.
Yeah.
I keep looking at Myles Gaskin, and I don't really want to I don't want to get there, but I kind of see the case for it, especially because if anyone's going to get targets, it's going to be him. He could have a DeAndre Swift light role where he gets the 10 targets and negative game script, and I still think he's a good enough running back to have some leverage on his work, churn out some yardage. So what are you thinking here with the Dolphins? I might need a little
really
bit more
want
time.
Devontae Parker back.
Yeah.
Really want him. I think that if he gets in a full practice Friday, he's the best receiver in the 5,000 range. In that game against the Bills, they didn't use Tre'Davious White to shadow him. I think he ran roughly 40 to 50% of his routes against White in that game. I looked it up on Next Gen Stats, but I totally forgot the stat. It was around 40% or so. So he'll see him, but it's not going to be every play, especially with Jalen Waddle getting more work recently. I mean, Waddle's more of a slot guy, but I think Parker would be a really good bring it back, and I would want to go there first. Gesicki's salary's gone up, Waddle's salary's gone up, and if Parker plays, that does take away some targets from them. So I would say really want to get to Parker. harder for me to justify the other just because like expectations of the Dolphins offense aren't super high given the matchup. The Bills defense is legit. I think I'm higher on the Dolphins offense in general than most, but in this matchup, I'm not. So I would say Parker would be the bring back. Otherwise, probably just nothing on the Dolphins side.
Oh, their implied team total is 18 points.
Their betting team total is 17, and I considered an over there, but they couldn't quite get there, but I really considered it.
So their implied team total on the main slate is better than just the Jets and Texans.
I think that's off, but
it's tied with the Bears.
Yeah. Well, I think the Bears should be bigger underdogs. I think the Dolphins should be smaller underdogs. So like,
yeah.
But bookmakers are smart. They know what they're doing.
No matter how you say it, like I don't know. It just feels like there's another game where it's really hard to bring it back with a lot of confidence. Yeah. But I don't want that to take me off of Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs.
So I think it's by the sound of things, it sounds like the two spots where we're okay going with no bringbacks are Tom Brady and Josh Allen lineups. Is that correct?
Yeah, I would kind of put Justin Herbert in that bucket, but I'm not going to play that much of him.
Yeah, we put Allen and Brady above Herbert, is what you're saying, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Allen's the best quarterback play on the slate. Do you agree?
Yeah.
Okay. Probably. That's not a hot take, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to prioritize him because I'm going to value the mid-range running backs so much, and there's not enough value at receiver. So I might be bumping down to even a Hurts, but probably more specifically like a Brady. But I would be fine jumping down to Tannehill or Wentz if I need to.
Single entry, like you got one lineup for the Bills. Are you bringing it back with Parker or someone or no?
I think I would bring it back with Gesicki.
Okay, fair enough. Let's move now to the weather discussion. There is some potential rain in Buffalo. Winds are at 10 miles per hour and the rain doesn't look too bad, so I wouldn't worry too much, but check back on that one on Sunday. We do have 11 mile per hour winds for all those game stacks in Chicago for the Bears and the 49ers. That's fine, but just check back on that later. I don't care. And then 13 mile per hour winds for the Browns and Steelers. So the bad games outside of the Bills game are the ones that have potential wind concerns. We should be good to go. So let's move now to our positional plays for week number 8. Brandon, who stands out to you at quarterback for this week?
I'm going to go with Jalen Hurts. I know I said Josh Allen's probably the best quarterback play, but I think it's a little bit more realistic that I build some stacks around Jalen Hurts. So I'm going to go there, 8,400. Detroit's 31st against the pass, according to numberFire's adjusted pass defense metrics, 32nd in yards per target allowed on downfield passes. It's a dome game, which I've talked about in the past. Not like other people have too, I know, but it's a tangible increase, even on projected outcomes. The odds that guys go over their projections are higher in dome games. You can justify stacking Devontae Smith still, Dallas Goedert. He's not fallen shy of 20 FanDuel points yet. I don't like that as an argument.
I don't think he's going to miss.
But there's a reason
off against the Lions.
Yeah. But there's a reason he gets there, and it's because he has so many ways to accrue fantasy points. My second level is going to be Carson Wentz at a salary of 7,200. He has maxed out at 22.6 FanDuel points, which I hate. There are only a few, probably two, depending on how you view Tom Brady. If he can really get to 30 points, he needs that yardage, but not a whole lot of slate changing quarterback options. And so that goes back to something I talked about way on earlier in the show is, does Allen get there? Does Hurts get there? If not, then you really have to bump up the lower salary quarterbacks. Tennessee's 17th against the pass. Wentz has put up decent numbers against bottom tier pass defenses with 224 yards, 1.5 touchdowns in 4 contests. Also has a 4-game sample of 0.34 passing net expected points over his past 4 games, which is really strong. It's actually like Matt Ryan's, but not quite as good over Matt Ryan's past 3 games. So, honestly, I don't know what the ceiling difference is for Wentz compared to Ryan, aside from the fact that Wentz's game is much more likely to erupt with points.
And Wentz is starting to run again a little baby bit, looking pretty spry. So I think that helps too. My first love is Tom Brady. I think that it's a dome game, high total, tightish spread. The Saints are good against the pass. They rank 10th there, but honestly, that might be a good thing for Tampa Bay to keep the game more competitive and keep that yardage feisty. Brady's had 36 plus pass attempts in every game this year. Don't think they can run on the Saints. So he is eventually going to be doing for some touchdown regression because like his touchdown numbers are stupid right now, but his salary is not outrageous. But it's not like we're banking on his touchdown rate staying the same. So I think that Brady is a good play this week. I also do like Ryan Tannehill over Wentz in that game. And Indy's defense ranks 24th against the pass. They're actually first against the rush. Doesn't worry me about Henry, but like Tannehill did struggle against him in week 3. This is a repeat divisional match, but A.J. Brown got hurt early in that game, and Brown makes a big difference on this team. So although it's a repeat matchup, it's kind of a different situation because Brown didn't play as much there. So it's a different offense now than it was then. So Tannehill at 75 opens up a lot. I will stack him with Henry. We'll stack him with Brown. I think I agree with you where Julio is a bit of a tougher sell, but I do like Tannehill quite a bit. Let's move now to
do you know what's not a second time around divisional matchup?
Is
Matt Ryan.
Don't care.
I'm waiting for Matt Ryan to put up like 13 FanDuel points now. But again, the case I laid out, I feel good with, and I can say that much.
Are you going to use him?
Very likely.
Okay. Do you want to do a Ryan versus Wentz bet?
No. Wentz was one of my loves. What are you talking about?
I know, but you were talking about like, oh, he's on the same page as same tier as him, blah, blah, blah.
The game is different.
All right. The game's still the game. Let's go to running back. What you got there?
The game is the game. Speaking of that, I pivoted off of Darrell Henderson during the show here, and I'm gonna go with DeAndre Swift instead. I think Henderson's fine. I think he deserves to be like the top projected value. I get it, but with Swift, love the workload. 26 adjusted opportunities per game, which is carries plus double your targets. 47% red zone rushing share. It's averaging 7.4 targets per game. And only one other running back is above 5.8. That's Najee Harris at 7.7. But Najee Harris also had one outlier game with 19 targets. So it's basically been Swift as like the guy with an incredible receiving workload. Not to diminish Najee or any of the other receiving backs, but like he's a tier above in terms of volume. And you know, target share counts, but at a certain point, so does volume, because we know that this team needs to throw to him a lot, and they should have to throw to him a lot this week. 30% red zone target share as well. So I'm in on Swift. I think he's a great play. I'm also in on Cordero Patterson at 7,300, tied to a passer who's playing a lot better lately. 73% snap rate, 63% route rate last week. 14 carries, 4 red zone carries, 5 targets. So I was out on Patterson earlier. The salary's back down. The workload's also a lot better than it was. So that's why I'm changing my tune. Always change your opinion whenever you have better information, more information. And that's what I'm doing here. And my third love, I hope you don't have both of these guys, but
I do.
Eli Mitchell. I think that we can both agree that at their salaries, Patterson and Eli Mitchell are
correct.
Great plays. Mitchell has emerged as the primary way that I want access to these value backs. He was featured last week from the start of that game for the 49ers. 66% of the snaps, 18 carries, no targets, which is well within the range of his outcomes, but he did run 14 routes, so it wasn't like he didn't play on any passing downs. So I'm okay with Mitchell as a value back.
Yeah, I have him first two among the value guys. 14 routes on 30 dropbacks. So he actually ran on half, almost half. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
He had 2 targets in his other 2 games this year, or other 2 games like a featured back, and Hasty did play in one of those. So like he's limited, but like again, he's Damian Harris at a lower salary and his team is favored. I don't know. Like, why am I going to fight that? I do think that Zach Moss is interesting. We'll probably use him as like a differentiation piece. Mitchell's the primary guy here. Did have Cordero Patterson as well. If you look at the 2 games since his snap rate spiked, he has a 28 adjusted opportunities per game, 43% red zone share, which is carries or targets inside the red zone. Panthers 21st against the rush. They haven't let up much to running backs in the passing game. They did limit Alvin Kamara, but I just think he's a good salary relative to his workload at 73. Jonathan Taylor was my first love. I talked about his concerns earlier in terms of like his usage, but like there are massive, massive upsides here as well. He ranks 3rd in the slate with 113 yards per game. He has a 50% red zone share, which ranks second on the slate. It's the highest total on the slate, tightest spread on the slate, checks a lot of boxes, and his snap rate has been above 60% in 2 straight games. Colts also open as 1-point dogs and are now 2-point favorites. Again, interesting for Taylor. So I think that is a good thing. We did not talk about Khalil Herbert. He's $6,500. The Bears stink, but he doesn't. Tight spread, which may lead to passing attempts. We also don't know what Damian Williams' role will look like now that he has a full week of practice. So where are you at on Herbert at $6,500?
I very easily might not have any, just due to the sheer fact of the number of running backs that I want to play. We've been mostly fixated, and I know you did a trend on the guys above 8,000, but we've mostly kind of fixated, it feels like, on the $7,000 backs. Yeah. But we also have those studs like with Najee, Eckler, Kamara, Henry to consider. I'm going to start Herbert where I have him in season long, and I'm going to feel great about that, but I don't think it's the right week for him in DFS.
Okay, let's move to wide receiver. What you got there?
Unsurprisingly, Stephon Diggs. But before I say that, I mean, can we talk just quickly about like what we're doing with Cooper Kupp, Jamar Chase?
I'd like to use Kupp. I think Kupp is a better option than Chase this week, just because the volume is insane for Kupp. Chase is getting by. Who is Higgs? So I think it's T. Higgins. Anyway, there's no Harry Higgs.
Yeah.
Jamar Chase, I think, is getting by more on efficiency, which is harder to bank on, whereas Kupp is getting efficiency and stupid volume.
Yeah.
Dome game, not facing Mike White on the opposing side. Like, even Davis Mills is better than Mike White. So I would say Kupp over Chase, despite the salary difference.
So, like, are you going to play Jamar Chase? Like, I know you would want to, but do you see yourself playing some Jamar Chase? Because I don't think I do. Probably I don't think I get there with the way that I'm looking at the slate and the way.
Does it scare me? Yes. But,
But you can't play that way.
Yeah.
So, all right. I just want to talk about those two specifically because they stood out at receiver in terms of their salaries. So I'm just going to play Stephon Diggs a lot, which everyone will, but 7,300, insane floor to ceiling or boom bust ratio in my simulations among receivers, 26% target share, 33% air yard share, 3.6 combined high leverage targets per game, 6th among the main slate receivers in expected FanDuel points per game. Should actually have some positive regression there. And Miami's 29th in adjusted FanDuel points per target allowed to wide receivers. Speaking of Higgs, T. Higgins, 6,300 is my second love. We have some concerns with Mike White and the Jets, but Jamar Chase's salary of 8,200 is way different than T. Higgins at 6,300. Higgins in his healthy games actually leads the team with 27% of the team's targets. I do not expect him to lead this team long-term with games with Jamar Chase, but point being 27%, if it falls off, it's probably still going to be 23, 24%. That will just kind of flip maybe. He had 4 downfield targets, 2 red zone targets last week. I don't love the game, but I love that volume for a capable receiver at 6,300. And then my third love, I don't really want to dig into the 5,000 range very often at receiver. So I'm going to go with Jerry Jeudy at 6,000. Don't like the game so much, but I like Jerry Jeudy. Just 23 routes from him, 7 targets. That's 30.4% of his routes he got a target on. That rate, I know it's not fair. I know it's a small sample, but again, that's at least a sticky stat because it's just targets per route. Like, that's put him on the field, let him run routes, throw him the ball. Like, are you doing that? Yes or no? That rate trails only Cooper Kupp, Devontae Adams, and Deebo Samuel on the season. So at 6,000, I think you could do way worse than Jerry Jeudy for value. And I don't like really anyone below that salary.
Yeah, I think Judy's interesting. I also have Stephon Diggs as my top love for the exact same reasons you listed. So we're all in on Stephon Diggs. I think, like, for a cash game, just put him in. Put him in and go from there. I think that makes too much sense. My second one was Michael Pittman. I think he's just kind of too good for a $6,600 salary. He has 23% of the overall targets, but 38% deep and 23% in the red zone. He's like mossing dudes every week, which is fun to watch. He's playing indoors. He had 12 targets in the first game against Titans, He's topped 100 yards twice. He had 89 another. He's just undersalaried. So I like Pittman a lot. Love him for this week. My third love. Do I do it? I have Robbie written down. He has 26% of the targets without McCaffrey. 26 have been 26% of the red zone targets, or 26% of the deep targets, 23% in the red zone. He is $5,700. He's probably going to get 9 targets indoors against a bad defense. Like,
how many targets?
9-ish, probably.
Okay, let's say he gets 9 targets. Over under 30 yards on those targets.
I was going to say 13, but 30 works too. I don't know, man.
Like the process makes sense.
Yeah. And this is not like I'm chasing him thing because I've not used it the past couple weeks.
Yeah. And I mean, they're going to have to throw because they're going to be trailing playing against the red hot quarterback.
Oh my gosh. It's sufferable. Anything else down here?
We went over this Monday and I don't see a whole lot different from Monday today.
I would not be shocked if I wound up having a Van Jefferson share just because like he's a good football player and the offense is good.
His role was better last week. You thought it was.
I think it's because they don't think they need to use Deshaun Jackson against the Lions, and I think they'll probably think the same thing this week against Houston.
So if that's the case, then Jefferson. I would rather play Jefferson than Robbie.
What about Odell Beckham or Robbie?
Just no.
Devontae Parker?
Yeah, I would play Parker over Robbie.
Okay, fair enough. You're probably right. Let's move to tight end so I can stop talking about this terrible, terrible football player. What you got there?
Kyle Pitts.
Not a terrible football player. Quite good, in fact.
Very good. I kind of view him as a mid-range receiver at this point. It might be a little bit overzealous, but the role was very different. Last week lined up outside a ton, got a lot of downfield work. Again, like I know I'm joking about it, but like Matt Ryan's played better, and that helps me feel good with Kyle Pitts at 6,800. He's the guy this week, I think, at tight end that you should try to prioritize. If you can't, you have some other options, but he's not like, I want to say the upside with yardage and a touchdown is like kind of comparable to like what we could get from at least the Mark Andrews, maybe not quite a Travis Kelce, but he could go for over 100 and a touchdown. And that's about what you expect from a tight end at the high end. But if not, I like Dallas Goedert, 5,900. He trails only Kyle Pitts in percentage chance that he gets the 15 points in my simulations. Just kind of, he is like the clear number 2 for me. You probably feel differently, but I think he's the number 2, especially at the salary. Just 5 targets last week, but 4 of those were downfield. His ADOT was over 18 yards, which you just don't really see at tight end. So that's really good if it sticks, and we know that Zach Ertz is gone.
Yeah, that means he has yardage upside, which isn't true for most tight ends, which is why I have Kyle Pitts first, because I think that like it's really hard to find yardage upside there. He's had 119 plus yards in 2 straight games, including one with Calvin Ridley active. He has 28% of the deep targets if we look at just the games Ridley has played, including the games where it seems like they didn't really know how to use him. Pitts had 4 deep targets last week alone. The Panthers let up 71 yards to Tyler Conklin, 58 and a touchdown to Dalton Schultz, and Pitts' role is better than those guys by a little bit. So I think Pitts worth prioritizing this week for the same reasons you mentioned. My favorite value tight end is Tyler Higbee again. I know you'll be shocked, bamboozled. You are blown out of your seat that I'm talking about Tyler Higbee as a love. But hey, he's $5,300, plays every snap, touchdown upside. 27% of the team's red zone targets this year, multiple red zone targets, and for the past 5, he has just 2 touchdowns despite that. I tweeted about this yesterday, and multiple players in my same dynasty league accused me of trying to pump up his trade value because I have him. They've been desperately trying to move him in that league. 2 people from the same league accused me of this, but hey, $5,300. I need help getting to Henry and not using value wide receivers. He helps me get there, so money's fake. Let's go Tyler Higbee.
It's another one of those questions that like you can say the same thing for quarterback. It's really Pitts. you could maybe say Gesicki has like yardage upside, but the matchup's difficult. So if you say, hey, Kyle Pitts, doesn't really go over 15 FanDuel points, I don't see it this week, you might as well save salary.
Yeah. Higbee has not had more than 46 yards since week 1. It's encouraging.
I feel like
8 targets last week, though.
I feel like if I was recommending Tyler Higbee constantly, it'd be one of the spots where you would take offense.
Potentially. I can't push back on that. What you got a defense?
I'm going to go with the Chargers at 39. Coming off a bye to face the Patriots. 4th in adjusted pass defense based on numberFire's metrics. They will give up rushing, which I don't like, but Mac Jones hasn't been efficient enough to make me too nervous. I figure they play from ahead, and I mean, I'm good with it.
I'm just searching for something really quick because I think I might have another recommendation for a low salary tight end. I need to check something though. You can probably guess it if you want. Actually, no, I don't know. We haven't talked about this dude, so maybe you can't.
Tight end?
Okay. Yeah.
Is it Mo Alley?
No, he ran 9 routes last week. Just kidding. He played 63% of the snaps and ran 9 routes, but still got 3 targets, and he's amazing. Whatever. I hate the Colts. Anyway, my love is Washington. I'm not going to go like nuts with them, but I do think that they're the best salary saving defense. They're generating a lot of pressure, but they haven't turned it into sacks. And Teddy will take some sacks. Washington has faced a bunch of really good offenses so far this year. The Broncos can be better with Jerry Jeudy back, but I wouldn't put them as being like a great offense. So I'll take some swipes here at Washington if I need to like save a lot of salary, which I generally do. I will use the Chargers, who you discussed. I will use Chicago at times, despite the fact I think that the 49ers should be like more heavily favored. I will use Cleveland. I will use Denver. Just anything to save salary to make Henry easier to get to.
So Pro Football Focus has an offensive line, defensive line like matchup chart.
Yeah.
And I've never fully understood what the matchup scores are, but they're percentages, and they go from like, obviously they can go below, so you can have like a negative matchup.
Yeah.
But somehow the Patriots have a 104% matchup on the ground against the Chargers. So.
Yeah. That makes sense. That sounds about right.
Yeah. 104% is pretty wild.
Man, Damian Harris going to go for going to go crazy with 80 yards and maybe a touchdown. Just going nuts. Love it.
20 carries, 120 yards, 1 touchdown to get you like 18. And it's fine.
And people will be victory lapping on Twitter. Meanwhile, Cordell Patterson scores for the 15th time and has 28 points, but no one here says anything.
And like to clarify, 18 points from a back under 7,000 is fine, but that's like all he
80th percentile, 90th percentile outcome. Yeah, exactly. Okay. Any final thoughts here, Brandon, before we close up shop for week number 8?
I think we talked about a lot. Very clearly, we're in on one game to stack, and I think we have a clear 1-2. After that, it gets a little bit spotty. So it's just, I think, going to be a week where I have more one-offs than usual.
Yeah, another week to have more non-bring back options for your quarterbacks between Josh Allen and Tom Brady. I think that is viable once again this week. So different process, but I think a necessary retooling given the way the slate breaks down. That is all that we have here for today, but plenty of good stuff here on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. NBA and NHL back via Tom Vecchio, UFC via Austin Swaim, NASCAR, I'll be talking Martinsville tomorrow. We have PGA every week as well, so make sure you are subscribed to the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts, and while you're there, leave us a rating and review as well. Brandon, if people have questions for you on Twitter, where can they find you there?
Matt Cadola 13, GDULA 13.
And I'm at Jim Sannes, JIMSANNES. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcast. Big thank you to everyone for tuning in for today. Good luck to you with your lineups. Good luck to you in week 8. We'll talk to you once again on Monday to wrap it all up. This has been the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast powered by numberFire.